It was really just an easy in for someone who doesn't have any capital. A great way to, one, sharpen your skills on how to find deals. Because, I mean, if you don't know how to find deals, then you're kind of just waiting around for people. So sharpen your skills on how to find deals, because people with money don't have the time and people with no money have the time. So I would encourage people listening to really utilize that component. Like, get great at recognizing what a great deal is. Once you are able to do that, perfect. Now you're in front of people who want to talk to you about the deals.
This is our guest, Thia Velinor. She's a real estate investor who started investing using the wholesaling strategy. Here, she talks about how to get started wholesaling your very first deal. Thia also shares how she was able to scale up to 66 units with none of her own money and the lessons she's learned along the way. All this and more coming up in the episode.
You're listening to the Black Wealth Effect podcast, where we're all about inspiring the next generation of Black Canadian real estate investors to succeed financially. If you're tuned in, that means you're hungry to take action and build wealth outside of your 9 to 5. We'll be sitting down with Black real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and allies to discuss a diverse set of topics to help you along your investing journey. Let's get started. Special welcome to our guest, Thia Velinor. Thia, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. I'm happy to be here with Ron and yourself. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're happy to have you, and definitely we're excited to jump in, and we want to talk about a few different topics, wholesaling being one of them, given that you're definitely making waves in that space right now. Yeah, but before we delve in, we really just want to start at the beginning. And so thinking back to growing up, and also even before you started your investing journey, like, what did growing up in low income neighborhood, but at the same time having big dreams to make it to the WNBA, teach you about resiliency and the importance of drive when it comes to achieving your goals?
Honestly, it taught me so much. It just built so much character, because the people around me, they, for the most part, were just kind of content, and just being whatever. And I can't say that it's one thing. Maybe I would have to really, attribute that to my mom and just how hard of a worker she was, and just, always just striving for better. So for me, I've just always naturally had these big aspirations. Like you said, I wanted to be in the WNBA. Like, who even thinks about that kind of stuff? Most people are like, I want to be a police officer, but no, I'm going to be a professional ball player. And that's what I'm going to do. And, just growing up in that area just makes you really, grateful for just my upbringing, because not everybody was fortunate to have a mom who, didn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't. And, that's really what I grew up around, seeing a lot of parents kind of doing that around their kids. And then, I'm hanging out with their kids and they're out till whatever time at night. And it was completely different. So I couldn't really appreciate it at the time so much, like why my mom had me on this short leash and go play ball and come back inside kind of thing. But I get it now. So I think just growing up in that area and seeing people be creative and resourceful, it's huge. It's just like in real estate. Like I always say, creativity wins, right? So I think a lot of my creativity and just wanting more was more so seeing my environment and knowing there ain't no way. There's no way. I'm definitely about to be, doing something incredible. I just didn't know beyond basketball what that would be, Yeah,
that's great. And you touched on a few good points there. One, obviously having that support system, whether it's your family or just your broader network, to support you in achieving those goals. And as we talked about as well already, right, just around having that drive to go and actually do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a follow-up to that, can you talk a little bit about kind of your mindset or some of the limiting beliefs whether it was around money or just wealth creation, that you had to let go throughout that process?
Yeah. For me, like the mindset definitely shifted once I got into real estate. Because before it was, real estate, it's a rich man's game, not to mention a rich Caucasian. Like, what are we doing within real, like how? I don't have any money, and that for me was the hurdle to really have to kind of overcome. Like even early on in my journey, when I was kind of just learning about real estate and wholesale, I'm just like, who's really going to take me serious? Like this Black girl's going to go door knocking and they're going to, and I had to really like stop myself and be like, hey, other people are doing it. It's not something that can't happen. And I always, for me, like, I've always had myself kind of like, I don't want to say like an elevated perception of myself, but I just never thought I was ever basic. Like, why can't I be on a yacht with my family enjoying life? Or like, that was my thing, and why can't I do it? Other people are doing it. So I think it's important to have that kind of a mindset where it's like, if one door closes, you're going to figure out how you're going to get it done another way. And again, growing up in that type of neighborhood, there was a lot of pivoting. You had to figure out a lot of things. So if you didn't have money for something, okay, well, how can we make money without, obviously breaking the rules and doing these kind of things? So we would make stuff and then like go door to door and sell them. I would shovel, snow off of people's porches in the winter time. They'd be like, give me a toonie, loony, like whatever you guys feel we deserve. So it was a lot of that. I think once you have the right mindset, which a lot of people sleep on, you can really almost do anything, as cliche as that sounds, but it's just facts.
Yeah. Mindset is extremely powerful.
So powerful.
Definitely agree with you.
Yeah.
And so you touched on kind of the limiting belief around like not having the money or like not knowing where to get started.
Right.
For an investor starting off that might have that mindset, can you talk a little bit about like why like you focused on wholesaling in terms of getting started and maybe just explaining the process like for that strategy as well?
Yeah. So for me, starting within wholesaling, because I really didn't know where to start. I knew I couldn't just go start flipping houses. First of all, I didn't know how to, but furthermore, again, where am I getting the money? The credit, like all of those hurdles that everyone who's just beginning is like, oh my God. I ended up coming across something online. They were holding a webinar, and they said, you don't need any money to get started in wholesaling. I was like, great, because I literally have no money, but I have the time. So I'm going to go on this thing and see what it's about. And after attending that, it was probably like it was like an entire day kind of a webinar about wholesaling. I was like, oh my God, I think I can do this. Like, I really think I can do this. So I was super pumped. And, the following month, because that was in like May, I registered Velinor Properties. And I was like, okay, which people listening, you don't need to do that right away. Like, just do your thing. Just start getting deals. But for whatever reason, I decided to do this. And then, I just started kind of plugging away at it. Like, you can only learn so much info, right? Like, a lot of the learning comes from the action components, right? The doing. So as I started doing, I'm tying up deals that didn't really make sense, but I'm learning along the way. And it took me 6 months to get my first one done, but I got it done. And after that, the following month, I did 6 deals. Next month, I did 7 deals in the same month. And I was like, oh my God, I don't even need a job anymore. And, and then I ended up quitting in January of 2021. But yeah, it was really just an easy in for someone who doesn't have any capital. A great way to, one, sharpen your skills on how to find deals. Because, I mean, if you don't know how to find deals, then you're kind of just waiting around for people. So sharpen your skills on how to find deals, because people with money don't have the time and people with no money have the time. So I would encourage people listening to really utilize that component. Like, get great at recognizing what a great deal is. Once you are able to do that, perfect. Now you're in front of people who want to talk to you about the deals. So now there's the networking component that, you get to really embark on and shape and form these new relationships with people. And I got my first 17 doors without putting any money. All I did was find the deal. And then they gave me 25% equity. And I was like, this works. Because how else am I still was in the same issue, right? Like, I don't have a job. No bank is going to give me a mortgage. But, people really underestimate the power of starting with wholesaling. Like, there's just so many good skills that you get to, you get out of that, and you're able to, as I said, leverage it and get doors with no money at all.
I love that. You dropped a whole bunch of wisdom there. So I love that. But as a follow-up to that question, you're very active on social media, promoting, the many deals that you lock up. I noticed that you have a broad spectrum in terms of the markets that you're finding these deals. Could you share a bit about these markets that you're focused on, and why are you focused in these areas?
Well, I really, really love Northern Ontario. I know everyone is like super excited about Southern Ontario. I was too. And then obviously you've seen it was just saturated, especially for wholesaling as well. The price points, it's really competitive, but not a lot of people were paying attention to what was happening in the North. So for me, I started in Sudbury, and then we got a 5-plex there, and I was like, okay, sweet. And then we went a little further and we went to Timmins, and I just love Timmins. Like, if I can find as many multifamilies there, I want to tie it up, mainly because of the distance and just that the market, it's a lot cheaper. So the entry point is more affordable, but your cash flow is super high, so you're not going to, appreciate anything like you would in like Toronto or a Niagara Falls or something, but you will get your appreciation, but you have your cash flow and you have an asset, right? So for me, that's what was important. And I also realized while wholesaling there, a lot of people started paying attention to Timmins and Sudbury and North Bay. And I was like, okay, there's not many people here. So I think that's why I was able to kind of make a run and do all the great things I've been able to do there. But again, I love it because of the low entry point and the high cash flow.
Yeah, that's important that you try getting where you fit in, right? Like,
exactly.
Don't try and make the numbers work. If that means expanding a couple hours outside of where you're living, you got to just do it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I also recognized with that as well is, what also helped me scale is that I don't need to go and see every property. And that was a huge hurdle for me at first, because I'm driving here, I'm driving there, and I didn't even have these things under contract. And I'm driving around. And then, as I, became more wise, I was like, that's kind of counterproductive, because I can go all the way there, see the property, and on my way back, now someone else has it under contract, right? So for me, it was like, how can I tie up these properties quickly without having to see them? And if they're super far, what am I going to do? And then that's when I was like, oh, let me see if I can get someone off of Kijiji to take some photos in Sudbury for me. And that was it. And now that's what we do, right? We don't have anyone there. We're going to find someone, on the ground who can go ahead and do that. So it really helped, the scalability, being able to move quickly, because I can get photos done in a couple of days, even if it's 7 hours away in Timmins. We can have a package done within 24 hours of that. And now we're marketing a deal from the time I found it or put in the offer till the time it hit the market, 3 days, and that's just what we've been doing. And then I was able to kind of build a team to help me find more deals faster and create these packages for me so we can scale and move quick.
I love how you touched on that. It's about really creating a business, right? So trying to remove yourself and have other team players involved.
Right.
I love that you touched on the fact that you didn't have to be there, but you found the right people, the who could do it for you, right? So that's super important. I think we usually get tied up and in the weeds too much and in our heads too much of like, how could we do this rather than who could do this for us, right?
I agree. And I tell people, because they're like, well, you didn't see the property. I'm like, if I seen it, like that's more of a comfort thing for us. Because I always ask myself, are you an inspector, a licensed inspector? No. Okay. Are you a contractor? Oh, no. So you just want to look at the house. You just want to look at it. It makes no sense. Go and get the people you require. So if you need an inspector, go get an inspector to do it. He's going to send you the report. You're going to have detailed information of what is going on with the property. You need a contractor, go and get that done, So you just have to, again, remove yourself and and stick to what matters. We do it for, it's the comfortability component, right? But if I walk through a house last year, like, I mean, I don't know what's happening under the floor, or, so just get a team. And, once you've worked with one person, continue to work with them, and build that relationship. And then next, they're telling you about a contractor that's their buddy, and, and then boom, now you're talking to this person, and you start slowly building a power team in these different areas.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. I love that you touched on that. And you would have mentioned this earlier in the conversation, but the last number that I saw on your IG was 66 units in your portfolio.
Yeah.
Now, for someone who is, new to real estate, try to walk us through how you went from wholesaling properties to actually owning multiple. Like 66 doors, is not a small feat. So kind of walk us through that.
Absolutely. So the first 17 doors came in 2021. I apologize. That came in 2021 with a partner. So I had wholesaled the deal in Sudbury. This was the first 5-plex and first 5 doors I got. Then there was an issue with the buyer. His partner had run off with the money, something. And he was like, my property's, my house, my actual primary residence is going to be foreclosed on. Like, I can't afford to move forward. I was like, okay, let me see what I can do. I spoke with a partner. She was like, you know what? Let's go in. If you waive the wholesale fee, we'll give you, there's 3 of them. We'll give you equal partnership at 25%. I was like, yeah, like, let's do that. So once that happened, again, light bulb opened up. Like, if I can do that with her, I can definitely do that with someone else as well. So we ended up accumulating 17 doors between Timmins, Sudbury, and an 8-unit in Cornwall. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. And then towards the ending of that year, I sent out a flyer campaign for my wholesaling business and found a single family for $65,000. I did some due diligence and I knew that this thing is worth $160 in its best condition. That's the ARV. I was like, okay, got a contractor and it needs $40,000 worth of reno. Okay, I'm going to do this. This is my first one. So I'm scared. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? I usually sell these things, And then we went ahead, did the reno, was a perfect burr, pulled out all the money and still have the asset now. So I was like, wow, okay, I just did my first one. If I did one single family, I can do this again. And then I went ahead and got a 4-plex, and we're still in the process of renovating that with a partner, the same partner who lent me the $65K. When I returned his money, he was like, hey, I found a 4-plex in Timmins for $65,000. I was like, great. So we deployed it there. I was like, fantastic. And that's what I like. Once you build the relationship, just keep building, right? And then now we have a 5-plex that I found with 20% VTB, and he's also holding it. So it was just, not slow, because it happened quickly, but it's just once you realize you can do something, your confidence is built up, and now you're actively looking for more doors and more ways to grow. And that's what it was. And then I found another guy who I'd met throughout the network. We had spoken a few times, still never met in person. He had 39 units under contract and was raising some money for in Saskatoon. I was like, my goal is 100 doors by the end of 2022. And I started the year off with 22 doors. So I was like, okay, this is great. So then I jumped into that deal and partnered with him. So that's where now I'm at the 66 units.
That's awesome. I love that story. And you touched on it, like real estate, everybody think it's just brick and mortar, but it's really the relationship that you foster that really take you far.
I agree. It's huge on relationships. Like, I wasn't the biggest fan of networking. Like, I always just felt like it's awkward. Like, I feel like you feel like I have to talk to you. And that's why I'm like, it's just awkward. And even now I'm not perfect by any means. It's still a little awkward, but it's super key in real estate. Like, you want to go fast, sure, go by yourself. You want to go far. Like they say, you have to go with a team. Like, you only have so much money. The bank will only lend you so much, So yeah, it's very important on speaking to people and then just trying to figure out how we can create that win-win. You know, it's not always you trying to get something from that person. It's like, what can we do together? Like, how can we build together? And, you know, a prime example of that is I was just in Punta Cana. I was looking at some villas, and there's someone in the network who had just got a villa or a condo in like Turks and Caicos. So I reached out. I was like, hey, I'm going to go and look at these things. Like, how do you feel about it? You know, and she was like, you know what? I literally had on my vision board an Airbnb in the Dominican Republic. And I was like, wow. So we had another follow-up call today, and it's just, and we want to move forward. So it's really in just making those connections and speaking to people. And because the network is full of like-minded people, you have like, you can go so far with the most random person. Like, we never would have been talking outside of real estate, you know, but you're like, wow, our mindsets really align and we're about the same thing. So let's go ahead and get this thing together.
Yes, yes. Your network is your net worth.
Oh, absolutely.
I truly believe that.
Me too.
But let's bring it back to current day. And, you know, as investors, we're continuing to navigate the impacts, you know, of the rate hikes of this year.
Mm-hmm.
The Bank of Canada just went up a full 1%, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was scary for a lot of us. You know, how has your business pivoted, you know, within this current market? You know, has there been any, you know, business goals that you had to revisit and tweak? And what's currently going on in your business? Yeah,
I mean, for us, we started the year, you know, very strong. Like, we were easily doing, you know, 6 figures a month. And then the interest rate went up and I was still doing okay. And then we really felt it. It completely slowed down. So instead of us getting 5, 6, 7 deals done a month, it was like 1 deal, maybe 2 deals. And I was just like, oh my God, like, as investors, because my mindset is I'm still looking for deals. I just know I'm going to run my interest rate at 5, 6%, but I still want to find stuff. So for me, it was like, I don't understand what investors are doing. Like, why are we this scared? You know, so we had already started thinking about launching a short-term rental business because my partner, Sean, he's very passionate about it. We just didn't know, you know, when it would actually like, you know, go full throttle. So once we started seeing it slow down a bit, we had more time. So we're like, okay, let's get this thing up and running. So that's how we then formed Stellar Stays. And, you know, we have a couple properties that we're going to be having, you know, live in the next, probably next couple of weeks. So that's exciting. But, you know, it seems like people are now getting a little more comfortable with what is happening. And they're realizing, like, especially if you do this full time like I do, you got to figure it out. You need to make these numbers, do what the numbers need to do. So offer at the right price, you know, negotiate. And it seems like everything is kind of leveling back out, but we did pivot into some short-term rentals.
That's great. As you mentioned, like being able to pivot in the market and like be ahead of the trends and like do that due diligence, do your research, extremely important.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like you're still very high on, like, even in the current market, the benefits around wholesaling and then the strategy as a whole. For someone that's looking to get started in today's market from a wholesaling perspective, like, what advice would you give them? How should they get started? Should they potentially wait? Which it sounds, I feel like the answer is going to be no, but should they potentially wait?
Heavy on the no. No, start now. Just start. And, you know, when you're looking for deals, the way we're running our numbers now, we're using 5%, you know, so just increase it. And if it makes sense at 5% and it makes sense at 6%, someone's going to pick up the deal, because even if they can get it at 4% interest, there's more money built into the deal for them. So absolutely get started, invest in yourself first and foremost. Like, YouTube is fantastic because there's a lot of free, you know, content, but a lot, especially when it's, you know, directed towards wholesaling, is American based, right? Which I also want to get a channel going and provide and fill in some of those gaps for people who want to, you know, get started in Canada. But invest in yourself, connect with people who are doing what you want to do, you know, and pick their brain. But ultimately you might have to spend a couple of bucks. And it doesn't have to be thousands and thousands. Like when I started, I signed up for a network that was like $60 a month, you know? And if this was 4 years ago, I'm like, I'm not paying $60, like for what? But it's important because it really gave me the fundamentals that I needed. And it showed me how to fill out an APS agreement, you know? So you have to invest in yourself. Yes, the free content is there, but, you know, invest in yourself, speak to people, and just do it properly. You know, you can figure it out by yourself and it might take you a few years, or you can invest a few bucks and get there in a few months. You know, it's not an overnight success story by any means. Like I said earlier, it took 6 months for me to get my first deal done. And that was me working like 6 months. Like some days I'm like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Like, is this even going to happen? Is this real? You know, I'm like second guessing it because it just sounds like, what do you mean you just made 10K off of one? Like, it sounds far-fetched. Like it just can't happen to you, even though it's happening to others, right? But no, you just have to really stick with the process. It works. Like anything else, if you do it enough and you keep doing it, at some point or another, you're going to sell a deal. And that was the mentality that I had, right? I was like, okay, I'm getting close. What? People are driving to Sudbury to see this deal? Because that's where the first one was. I was like, no one's going to go to Sudbury. And 5 people like, we're going to be in Sudbury. I was like, oh, okay. Let me get myself down to Sudbury, which I wouldn't do today. I would just get someone else who lives in Sudbury, right? But yeah, just stick with the process and just know that it is exactly that. It's a process. It takes time. Anything worth having doesn't happen overnight, you know? So if you stick with it and build those fundamental skills that you need to go far in the business, and not just with wholesaling, but so many of the skills in wholesaling are transferable just into real estate investing in general. So, you know, once you have that down, you're good to go. But main thing, invest in yourself by all means.
Absolutely. Mentorship is so important. You know, we don't mind spending the Netflix subscription, but we often question, why do I have to pay for this? Right.
Right. Yeah, so, that was me, because my first mentor, I paid $15K. And when I tell people, they're like, who is he? Like Grant Cardone? And I was like, I'm sure that'd be like $1 million, but they don't get it. Right. But I see the value and it taught me a lot. And not only that, it put me in the circles that I needed to be in, you know? So, and that's what you're doing as well. Like this group I was a part of before, they'd say, you know, free friends are great. But when you pay for your friends to like get into these smaller rooms, the conversations are different. Your outlook is going to be different. Your mindset changes. So, you know, pay for your friends. That's what I say.
Absolutely. Yeah. Huge proponent of that. Absolutely. But yeah, you mentioned taking you 6 months to be an overnight success. Do you want to share an example of a wholesale deal that went wrong and kind of, you know, tell us what you learned from that experience? Yeah.
I tied up a deal in Sarnia, and I remember this because this was like one of the first ones, and I was like so excited. I was like, oh my God, I have an accepted offer. I didn't send a contractor to walk through. I just sent like a realtor that I had been speaking with, building this rapport. He was like, oh no, I'm an investor too. I'll go and look at the property. Oh yeah, you can get it. You know, it needs some reno. So that was obviously not the right play because he's not a contractor himself, right? So I tied it up and I started marketing the deal, and people are like, are you sure this is a deal? Like someone actually asked me, like, are you sure this is a deal? It looks like it needs a lot of reno. And it's like, yeah, it's a deal. Like, what do you mean? I tied it up, you know, we ran the numbers. And that deal obviously didn't go through. And the biggest learning component for me was, you know, don't skip any steps. Like it's great to have the realtor for the comms component, but be sure to, you know, have a contractor go in. And you don't need to pay for an inspection on every single deal. Like, I mean, I'll still even now only pay for some. Like if it's in really rough shape, I want the buyer to have some peace of mind, you know? So I'll go that extra mile and provide an inspection that we'll pay for. Other than that, really just get a contractor to walk through and pay him for his time, maybe $50 an hour, $100, but at least you know what you're getting yourself into in terms of a deal, whether you decide to close on it or not yourself. You should be treating the deal as though you're going to keep it. Like that's how I look at these wholesale deals. If it's like a deal that I wouldn't really be bothered with, or I know I need to get at this price point, that's what I'm doing. So for that first deal, it was just, you know, I didn't follow all of the steps, where when I learned how to wholesale, that also wasn't in there. And that's what I'm saying. It's about action, right? Because you can only read and learn so much that way. You have to just do it. And you're like, okay, you know what? From now on, I'm going to have a contractor go in. At least it'll be like, okay, this needs to be done. That needs to be done. Give you a rough estimate. So now you can provide your buyers with, an extra layer of confidence. And you can also refer that same contractor who did the work, right? So that way the price point still aligns with what you were told. So yeah, that deal did not go well. But that's what I learned. And I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Yeah, I love that takeaway that you had there, because when you're just starting out, like, you're not going to know what type of rentals a house is going to need, right? And
right.
That often sets us back. But then, the solution to that is really to, hire the
It's
expert.
$100 problem.
Yeah,
exactly. And a lot of people, we kind of pigeonholed ourselves, like, oh no, the property's too far, or, oh no, I don't know about that. Like, if you don't know anything about a renovation and you want to get involved in real estate, opposed to just not doing it, I personally would pull someone else in and be like, hey, if I give you 15% equity or 10%, are you willing to go through this process with me so I can learn firsthand? And that's the creativity components, right? In those pieces, just find someone who's doing it, bring them in and partner, but don't not do anything. Like, I feel like that should never be an option. You have to take action. The more you're going to make mistakes. As much as people say I've done a perfect BRRRR, there's no perfect BRRRR. There's always a problem. Okay. In a flip, there's always a problem. Life, there's always a problem. But did you die? Right? Like, that's the thing. You got to figure it out. And maybe look, Mario, you're in a situation now, you're doing a flip. I'm doing a flip. Your flip, it's on market. What are you going to do? You got to pivot. You're either going to short-term rental it. Maybe you're going to put some tenants in there, but you'll be fine. You don't have to know every single thing. You will never know every single thing. You're going to learn as you go. So I just really encourage people to take action. You'll learn so much. And if you're really afraid, just bring in a partner, take a little less off the top, because the value that you're going to be getting back is tenfold what you gave away. Right. Yeah. And that's what I think.
That's fantastic. And so we know that you're a very big advocate for mentorship and giving back to your community. Mm-hmm. Can you just talk a little bit about the importance of mentorship to you, as well as looking to support others in your community as well?
For sure. Mentorship for me, it's huge. It really, opened up my mind to what was possible. When I first sat down with my mentor, and I'm laughing because he was like, well, how many doors, do you want to get by the end of this year? And I was like, I think I can get 10. And he was like, 10? He's like, that's too small, Thia. Think bigger. I thought 10 was a lot. I was like, what do you mean? That is a lot of doors. And then a couple months later, I'm sitting at 17 doors there. And I was like, wow. But it was that, right? Just those little pieces. And when I was like, okay, I'm in Timmins, who's going to do the rentals for me? Having all of these, questions that most people have when they're investing in another area. He was like, I'm going to get you a team. You're doing a lot of work here. So it's the network, right? That you're also then connected with. And then you get to speak to these people and form your own relationships and then build. And, now if someone else needed a contractor in Timmins, I can now be like, hey, I know someone who can do the work for you. So I think mentorship, it's one of those things that people shouldn't skip over. If you don't have the money to do it, I get it. Just try to figure out a way that you can still get access to that info. And that comes with, again, just speaking with people. That doesn't really cost any money. Picking their brains. And, if someone brought a deal to me and they're like, hey, which I've done many times. They're like, I've never done a wholesale deal before. Okay, let's work on it together. And while we're doing it, I'm filling out the APS with them on a Zoom call, right? So they're learning as we go. They're on the conversations and the calls that I'm having with the seller. So it's those pieces. There's always a way to get around things, right? There's obstacles, but we can get over them. They're like hurdles. So don't, see an obstacle and just be like, oh my God, I can't do it. So I'm not. Figure out how you can do it. And I think that's super important. And in terms of, giving back to the community, for me, that's huge. I just want to see more representation, because I know that there's a lot of people who want to do what we're doing, but they still think they can't do it, or they don't have the money to. And that's just not the case, So I just want to like scream it from a rooftop, be like, listen, you can do it. You totally can do it. You don't need to be a realtor. Like, you don't have to be involved and be a realtor to do it, because that's also what I thought. I was like, I want to do real estate. I'm going to be a realtor, like everyone's normal thought process, right? But there's other ways, and you'll figure it out by having those conversations with people. But, I hope to do some like speaking engagements, which I'm supposed to do on the next couple months with some youth in, in an area that's, is not the greatest neighborhoods, but I want to really just empower some of these young ladies to know that, if I'm doing it, and again, it sounds cliche, but I don't have like a special degree or, I didn't come from money myself. It's just, if you have hard work and grit and you really want to get it done, you're going to get it done. If you're going to make excuses, then you already know how that story is going to end, So I really just want to do more speaking engagements, figure out ways that I can help more people within our community get involved in real estate. So, even if they have a little bit of money, figure out how can we leverage that or leverage their RRSP to do stuff, So I'm still, trying to pen that out and figure it out, but that's super, super important to me for sure.
Yeah, I think representation is important. I love that you touched on that and that you're trying to put yourself out there to be that person shouting from the rooftops, like, we can do this as a community, right? So I love that you're passionate about that.
For sure. Because I mean, if I had seen that growing up, especially when I was younger, that would be so motivational to me or inspiring, I grew up, I wanted to play ball. I wanted to just like the normal things I think that people in these communities aspire to be, because I don't know if that's all a lot of them think we can be, it's like either it's music or but there's just so much more to that. And if school isn't your thing, that's fine. We're not, what we were 20 years ago, where it was like, go to school, get a job. You don't have to do any of that. In fact, I encourage you to really not do that. Like, think about what you want out of life instead of just like blindly, taking a course and then putting yourself in debt and then going to a job that you're going to be miserable at for the next 30, 40 years. Like, there's just so much more to life. And we're in that information age where a lot of it is available on YouTube. And, just if you want to seek out information, you'll find it. And that goes for anything. If you want to travel, you need to find the flight info, where to go to find it. Everything is research. So I just want to encourage our community to really do that. Reach out to me, like, let's talk, and let's get something done. If we can work together, I would love to. So that's my take.
I love it. I think that we have to have a part 2, Thia. This was an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed it. I love the passion that you bring to it. I really think that we should have a part 2 and have you on again so we could chat some more.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. But, before we end off today's episode, let us know what you have going on currently on the real estate side. And, what are some of the best ways our listeners could reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, what we have on the go is, of course, I have my wholesaling business, Velinor Properties, which you can find on Instagram by just typing in Velinor Properties. We also have Stellar Stays, which is our short-term rental business. So if anyone's doing any BRRRRs and they're looking to do a short-term rental, but don't want to, be bogged down with the bookings, the cleaners, and all that stuff that isn't so much fun, we actually will take care of that for you. And you can find Stellar Stays on Instagram at Stellar Stays B&B. And if you're looking for me, Thia Velinor, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram by typing in Thia Velinor. And, I'm always looking to connect with people, especially now that I'm looking at these vacation rental homes in Punta Cana. They are incredible. Like, the price points are so achievable for so many people who just feel like they only have a little bit of money. So what I'm kind of cultivating right now is figuring out a way that I can have people who only have like 5 or 10K come together, but still be able to own this vacation rental property. And because it's pre-construction on the build, you would have already had equity. Now we recycle that money and maybe then purchase a condo. So now for your 5 or 10K, you have equity in that property and in a condo in another country that is earning you some passive cash, right? So you'll have your investment money back in no time. And then it's an infinite return after that. So that's something I'm kind of penning and putting together. So once I figured out all the logistics, I want to share and, hopefully have as many people from our community get on board with that. Because I mean, what better way to, create some generational wealth than, through real estate, obviously. And I think that's where most people, where their mindset is at. It's just they're taking, maybe not the fastest or most direct route to get there. But that's what we have going on. And if you want to join our buyers list because you're looking for deals, definitely just drop us a line at Velinor Properties on Instagram and we will add you to our buyers list.
Love it. So for the next podcast that we have you on, we're definitely going to jump in more on that short-term rental overseas. So I can't wait to hear about it.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me, Ron and Mario. It was a pleasure.
Thia, thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on the podcast today. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
What was the one thing you heard today that inspires you to take action? Now plan to take that action in the next 24 hours. If you're looking for more support, ideas, or just want to connect with others like you taking action, join us in the Black Wealth Effect Facebook group. The link is in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time on the Black Wealth Effect podcast.